Tonight's speaker is Dr. Angela Cooper. Dr. Cooper is originally from Mascoutah, Illinois, and she grew up learning about the great site of the, and I always get the Cahokia Mounds, because I always wanted, my brain wants to say it some other way. Angela's educational and professional career has centered around Illinois archaeology. Dr. Cooper received her MA from the University of Tulsa, studying the relationship of Hopewell sites in the Illinois River Valley. After graduation, she worked as a supervisor of volunteer excavations at the East Palisade of the Cahokia Mounds for 2 summers, and then worked as a seasonal interpreter at the site in between those summers. She returned to the University of Tulsa and earned her PhD and returned to the Cahokia Mounds in 2023. And I hope you will all join me in a very warm welcome to Dr. Angela Cooper.
Thank you. I already forgot that everyone's muted. Thank you. I'm just gonna go ahead and start because tomorrow I have to leave very early in the morning to drive up to Bloomington for an archaeology meeting. So I'm gonna start right away. So if anyone has questions, we can get as many in. Okay, so I'm gonna share this window. Okay. Is that everyone can see that?
Yes.
Okay. Um, so as Catherine says, I'm Dr. Angela Cooper. I'm the Site Services Specialist 2 at Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site. And I'll be giving information about the site, indigenous ancestors, and what a little bit about what we're doing today. Okay, there we go. So here's the presentation outline talking about before Cahokia Mounds as like we know it today, which is mostly Mississippian based. Then I'll talk about Mississippian culture, how that is expressed, shared culture across the country. Well, not across the country, but across the Mississippian world. Talk about Cahokia Mounds specifically, and then end with talking about where the name comes from and a little bit more than that. So before Cahokia Mounds, there were people living in the Americas since time immemorial. The oldest uh, evidence of human occupation in the Americas is in White Sands, New Mexico, yes, White Sands, and National Park, and it shows footprints at the same, like, stratigraphically through time, and it's pre-Clovis. So Clovis is like the oldest culture that scientists had decided was the oldest evidence of human occupation in the Americas. And then pre-Clovis was like, no, there's actually much older sites, and it's in White Sands. It's 23,000 years ago, and its footprints in the same places like a lot of megafauna. So it's just pretty cool. We don't have that evidence in the American bottom, which is where Cahokia Mounds is located. But we have Clovis. We do have quite old occupation present, but that is along the bluffs mostly, not quite in the fertile floodplain. However, there could be, it's just that the Mississippi moved across this landscape for thousands and thousands of years, and so the sediments layering makes it pretty hard to find anything. It's probably quite deep. So here's what I was saying, where we see Clovis points or Dalton points. We use artifacts such as spear points to identify the age of a site, especially for Paleo-Indian time period, because they're moving about the landscape, doing a lot of hunting and gathering to follow the flora and fauna seasonally. And so they're not going to leave behind permanent evidence of permanent houses. So it's just that we've got a little bit demonstrated there. So up on the bluffs and out in the uplands, we get into the Archaic period and we see a lot more evidence of human occupation, because now these seasonal camps, they're staying a little bit longer because now it's like warmed up, right? So they also have started creating groundstone tools. And so that means that they are needing more permanent shelter, utilizing more wood to cut down trees. And so those, you're going to find axes and celts and adzes, small adzes. But larger camps, you know, access to food is a little bit better. And now we see that they are coming down into the floodplains, especially along those meanders of the Mississippi. At Cahokia Mounds specifically, we found not me, I wasn't there, but archaeologists found late archaic occupation. It was a base camp at a one of the many named spring lakes. They could tell it was used seasonally, and it was uncovered during the Interpretive Center excavation. So where they wanted to put the Interpretive Center, but then they had to move it because the water table was so high, because again, the meanders of the Mississippi created wetlands. I'll talk about that later too. So here down by these hunters with the atlatl, the spear thrower, and the spears, there's the grooved axe. So next, so we've got Paleo-Indian, Archaic, next is woodland. And again, this occupation increases, more permanent. During the woodland period, they're starting to cultivate plants. So not quite domestication, but still planting them in gardens and harvesting them. The bow and arrow has been developed at this time, as well as a new type of ceramic. So temper is what you add to clay to make it stronger, whether you're gonna fire it or put it directly on the fire. Right now, in the woodland period, can't quite put ceramics directly on the fire. They're not strong enough. And so what we find a lot is what we call fire cracked rocks. So they're getting stones, heating them up, and then putting them in the pots to heat up their food. Larger settlements, more permanent. Exotic goods mean non-local materials. So in the middle woodland period, so talking about my thesis, I looked at Hopewell, which is the name that we use for this middle woodland period in like east of the Mississippi River. I don't know quite west of the Mississippi River, but definitely east of the Mississippi River. We see these effigy mounds being made, so like serpent mound, effigy mounds. There have an extensive trade network reaching to the Rockies with obtaining obsidian, Michigan to get copper, Carolinas to get mica, and marine shell from the Gulf of Mexico. So the next time period that we see at Cahokia Mounds is a late woodland period. So this, when I say at Cahokia Mounds, I mean Cahokia Mounds State Historic Site. So in the floodplain at where our historic site is located. So it's a late woodland period. So they've slowed down on making these massive effigy mounds. There's not any effigy mounds in our region, in the American Bottom region. But we have some burial mounds, but that's kind of slowed down too. And they're just utilizing the ones that have been already constructed. They're still on the bluffs going down into the floodplains, but they're starting to settle again. larger settlements in one spot for a longer period of time. They're cultivating the flora even more, which having a set amount of food really is helpful for humans to sustain themselves year round and to settle in one spot. You don't have to keep moving about the landscape. So what is, I'm doing some more research because again, my focus has been Illinois, trying to learn about emergent Mississippian period in different parts of the Mississippian world. But what we see is a cultural change from that late woodland to Mississippian, which there's debate about whether to use terminal late woodland or emergent Mississippian period. They mean the same thing, it's that transition period. So ceramics are starting to have decoration, which cord marking may also be a way to like, como se dice, like evenly spread some heat around the pot. They're trying to start put it on the fire, trying to make the ceramics stronger, but also with thinner walls. So this move towards shell temper, they're eating mussel shell, burning it, grinding it, and then adding it to the clay, which makes it stronger. This little guy is called stumpware because no one knows what it's really for. There's an idea that it's made for essentially rehydrating corn. Is called nixtamalization, and it basically you make hominy. So maize is a great crop. You can store it for long periods of time. Example I give is I was given blue Osage corn in 2017 and I grew it last year. So like very hardy, very good at storing, staying dry as long as you keep it dry. And then over the winter time, now we have this corn that we can rehydrate and eat. So now we can stay in one spot permanently. We don't need to move around. And now more settlements are appearing in this flood land. So the Mississippian culture is found within the Mississippi watershed in the eastern geographic woodlands. So here's the Mississippi, and we see that it goes a little bit into eastern Texas and Oklahoma, as far north as Minnesota, as far south as Louisiana, Florida, as far east as Town Creek, which is in Carolinas or Virginia. I'm not quite sure, but middle Mississippian is what Cahokia influence is, and then these are the regional variations. So time period about 900 AD to 1730 with the Natchez in Mississippi. So this ending point is not that they all disappeared. It's the end point of this Mississippian culture that I'll talk about. So these main traits on this slide are the Mississippian cultures that we use. Is agriculture. I gotta move a cat, excuse me. Agriculture, artifacts, the chunky game, a specific cosmology, house structures, monumental construction, the raw materials that are being traded, and urbanization. So I think this one is Angel, and then this one is Moundville. So Angel Mounds in Indiana, Moundville in Alabama. So the agriculture is, in addition to the cultivation of native plants, which is where you're just getting plants, replanting them, harvesting them, versus domestication, which is deliberately choosing traits that you want to maintain or expand on. So with maize, start very small, and now we have big cobs with many rows of large kernels. So that's how domestication happens, like with dogs. choosing friendly, cute wolves, and now we've got dogs. So the large scale agriculture that we see consistent is corn, squash, and sunflower. In the southeast, after most people have left Cahokia Mounds, there's beans added to that list. But since it's not at all sites, it's not included. Here are some of the native plants: amaranth, knotweed, lamb's quarter, little barley, marsh elder, and I always forget this one, erect knotweed, and there's others. But those are especially ones that have been found at Cahokia Mounds. We see the shell temper. So if you see these little white specks, that's the shell being added to the clay. We also see similar iconography symbols on artifacts. Mill Creek chert pose. Mill Creek chert is a very difficult chert to flint knap, to break off. So you have to be pretty skilled. And it's great for that intensive agriculture, breaking up that prairie grass sod to start making larger farm fields. And we see a use of marine shell, creating shell gorgets or beads. So we get craft specialization, especially not just with these three things, but includes like copper working and things like that. But because of that maze, letting people stay in one spot year round, now I don't have to grow as much food. I don't have to focus on that. I can look at something else. I can become a flint knapper who can now break this chert down into a shape that I want it to. Because this type of chert is not utilized by ancestral Native Americans until the Mississippian time period. So this is one of our diagnostic artifacts where if you find it at a site, we know that it was Mississippian people there. So the chunky game, some archaeologists think that maybe it was invented at Cahokia Mounds, because again, doesn't show up till Cahokia Mounds. It is a game that utilizes a stone disc that you roll, and you have two competitors. They throw spears to try to hit the stone while it's rolling, or to get as close to the stone as possible for when it lands. So you can't really throw it after it stops rolling, because that defeats the purpose. I like using these images. This is from the Cherokee Phoenix newspaper. A Cherokee citizen has his own collection. This is called the Cahokia type. It's concave on both sides. Sometimes they're convex. Sometimes they're drilled in the middle, small or large like that. I don't know about that one. I've never seen that one before. But here's a book showing examples. He teaches Cherokee youth how to play chunky. And it's still played today by other descendant groups, like the Chickasaw Choctaw as well. Cherokee are a descendant group of Mississippian sites, but not of Cahokia Mounds. I'll get into that some more. But this too is a painting by George Catlin from the 1830s of Mandan men playing chunky. And the Mandan are further west, and they don't claim Cahokia Mounds as a ancestral site. So this impact of Cahokia Mounds across time and space is through chunky. So here's the cosmology. It's a 3-world system: an upper world where things fly, a middle world where humans and other things walk, and the lower world where things swim and crawl. So if something can access all 3 worlds, it's pretty a powerful creature or being. So here's that imagery of that cross in circle and with the rays radiating out of it like this ceramic. So that's representing the sun and the sacred fire. And the sacred fire comes to Mississippians from the sun, to Native people from the sun. And there's a lot of symbolism with that. So I had mentioned house structures. This type of structure, again, is diagnostic to Mississippian culture. It's called, we call it a wall trench structure. You dig a trench, you put posts in, you put up wattle and daub around it, but it's semi-subterranean. So it keeps, especially, I don't know if any of y'all have been down St. Louis, Southern Illinois during the summer. It gets real hot and humid, so that keeps it nice and cool. And we can have pretty bitter cold, and it'll keep it nice and warm during the winter time. And then thatch roofs. Here's an example of like a reconstruction from Moundville, also showing a stockade wall, which is another type of monumental construction that we see in the Mississippian world. Which, here we go, mounds, plazas, and stockades or palisades. So Cahokia Mounds has the largest communal space north of Mexico. It's 40 acres is the Grand Plaza, but there's 3 others with Monk's Mound in the middle. This area is naturally a ridge and swale, and they had to move massive amounts of dirt to make it flat and at all the plazas. And you can see that in these images. So here, I think this is also, these 2 are angel mounds. So stockades enclosing sites to protect them, maybe, because those don't show up till later in time. Oh, mounds. So mounds, people across time and space bury their dead in conical mounds. It's just easy when you bury something to pile up dirt over it. In the Mississippian period, we start getting platform mounds or flat top mounds, and structures would have been put on top of it. I think I talk about it later, but at Cahokia Mounds, we have a 3rd type of mound. It's called a ridge top mound, and that is a triangular prism shape. I'll talk about that more in a minute. So similar extensive trade network as the Hopewell time period, but there's no obsidian. There's a specific chert is coming out of the Cahokia region, as I mentioned, that Mill Creek chert. Other chert or stone like novaculite will get traded from Arkansas. So here's a map of the Mississippi watershed overlaid with some major Mississippian sites, and you can see, not quite from this one, but there are little creeks and things that people can access to get to the major parts of the waterways. And people are also walking. They're just gonna walk. There are no beasts of burden in the Americas. You could say a llama and alpaca is, but not probably as sturdy as an ox, right? But seeing this watershed, and we see that it goes out west, you can see how chunky could have went out there, you know, maybe traded, because the trade that's happening is not capitalistic. These very specific non-local materials, copper, mica, shell, we see at many sites, even ones at their location, that those are utilized by priests. So that's not really going to be traded in a sense of like exchange of monetarily. There's probably specific ways that they got it, but I've been told that my sharing the history, what we know archaeologically about Cahokia Mounds, I'm sharing that, and I've received gifts that way. So it's very reciprocal, what's happening. So chunky could have been that same thing. Maybe someone shared a story or shared something that the other person didn't have. Not necessarily that one thing is better than the other, worth more than the other. So at Cahokia Mounds, all that stuff I talked about, that's here. Cahokia Mounds is the largest archaeological site north of Mexico. Um, you'll hear me say that a lot. Grand Plaza, largest communal space north of Mexico. We can't compare it to Mexico, what's going down there. But north of Mexico, we're pretty awesome. So that late woodland is about 700 AD, mostly west, to the western part of the city. That's occupied year round, so fully sedentary, starting at 700, but it's not till 900 AD that maize comes into the region, that this Mississippian stuff starts happening. And it ends about 1350 AD. Originally encompassed 5 to 6 square miles or 4,000 acres with 120 mounds. Today, the state of Illinois owns, protects, and preserves 2,300 acres and 72 of the remaining 80 mounds. To give, again, scale, 4,000 acres, Moundville is the second largest Mississippian site, and it is 400 acres. So people wanted to be here. They wanted to be a part of it. I mentioned the Interpretive Center, how they found the late archaic occupation. They also found Mississippian occupation. So the Mississippi River is about where it was during the height of Cahokia Mounds, 1100 AD. So people were still willing to be wet, to step down into a wet house to be a part of what was going on here. So in terms of practicality, though, Mississippi, the confluence, the Missouri is pretty close by. But there's something particularly sacred about this place that brought people here, that had that shared ideology, or the ideology was shared out, something that really connected them to this space. Because we find 4 major language families. So just based on descendant groups, there's 4 major language families have been spoken at Cahokia Mounds: Algonquin, Caddoan, Muskogean, and Siouan speaking people. So that's why I said early on, not Cherokee, they're Iroquoian speaking people, but they are descendants of Mississippian mound building people. So here's a lovely painting by former Site Services Specialist 2, William Eisminger. He painted basically everything that was happening at Cahokia Mounds all in one painting, so it's a little bit anachronistic. Around the time that the stockade was built, they're no longer building mounds, so this borrow pit wouldn't be there. So borrow pits are where they've taken earth out of the flatlands to build the mounds. They're also getting it from the wetlands and the creeks that are nearby, and layering them very specifically, based on colors which have sacred meaning to them. So everything is very deliberate. Cahokia Mounds is and was planned on the cardinal directions. So that cardinal directions shape is a cross. So again, that circle and cross, the cross kind of looks like logs you would make to make a fire. So sacred fire. So all of that cosmology, ideology is represented at Cahokia Mounds, because when you get on a mound, you can now access the upper world. If you have a mound near some waterways, that priest most likely can access the upper world, middle world, and lower world. So we see that as a deliberate presentation of that sacred belief system. So 900 AD to 1100, they're building it up. 1100 to 1200, this is like rough estimates. That's the height of Cahokia Mounds, height of mound building, height of other monumental construction, no stockade yet, and height of population, 10 to 20,000 people. So there is going to be a population boom with good food, safety, all those things that make humans happy. But again, those 4 major language families, all those people coming in from around the area to participate in this. That 20,000 is for this 6 square miles. That's not including, let's see, do I have a picture? I might have to keep going back. That's not including St. Louis Mound Group population. It's not including East St. Louis Mound Group population. It's not including other mound group here, other mound group here, people living on the bluffs, people living in the uplands. I'm from Mascoutah, is 30 minutes east of Cahokia Mounds on the interstate. Like there's Mississippians out there. So within just this, even not even that far out going to Mascoutah, but just within this area, the American Bottom, there's probably 50,000 people living here, which is the most population until after the American Revolution, north of Mexico. So here's just another view of the orientation of the site of that cross. This is kind of archaeologists like boundaries. We don't quite know what their boundaries were. Can't excavate intention. Oh, I went too far ahead of my slide. So ridgetop mounds, here's mound 72. This one was fully excavated, was 3 separate burial mounds that was then capped off. When we see from that and another mound that was fully destroyed, that was a ridgetop mound, when we see that they're capped off, they're no longer used after that point of being capped off into that shape. So there's something pretty sacred about those mounds. And they're the least amount that's found on site. We say like 4 to 5. Why are we sure? Well, it's a great fertile floodplain. A lot of agriculture happened after, like in between contact and then Rev-War settlers and French people coming in till today. So the twin mounds, we see this type of mortuary complex at other sites because it's across from the biggest mound. They're the next biggest mounds after Monk's Mound, I think 40 to 60 feet. I'm not quite sure. There's like, I find different heights in the research, but the next biggest, and then when the stockade was built in starting 1175, it's enclosed, the most central ceremonial. So it's probably chiefs and their families or priests in here, because can't put a whole fence around that city. That's going to be a lot of wood, because this is already about 2 miles around and about 20,000 logs each time it was built. Woodhenge, which if anyone wants to come down, September 21st is a Sunday at 6:30 a.m. We're going to watch the sunrise. I haven't seen it where it's not been cloudy, but apparently it looks like the sun comes out of Monk's Mound. Bill Eisminger, also known as Mr. Mounds, he'll be out there talking about how Woodhenge was discovered, and we'll all watch it together. It's pretty cool. The winter one is easiest to get to. It's at 7 o'clock. But we'll watch the equinox sun coming up. That was constructed around 1100 AD and was only reconstructed for 100 years. 5 times, each time they added 12 posts. So the first circle had 24, then the next, I'm bad at math, I think 48, maybe. No, that's not right. I don't know. I'm bad at math. 36, 48. Yeah, 36 and 48, because 48 is the third reconstruction, and that's what we have at the site. The 5th time, it was actually only 13 in the sunrise arc. So they didn't need all those posts, but there's something probably other than a solar calendar for its use. Probably again related to the night sky. That changes a lot more than the daytime sky. Flint clay figurines. Flint clay is a soft-ish stone that is easily carvable. We see it comes from southeastern Missouri. It seems like they're bringing that material to Cahokia Mounds. It's being carved here and then sent out. Although many of the female figurines are mostly in this region, in the American Bottom, and women are the farmers. So that's the imagery we see is they're farming. So they probably had some power being able to access that lower world. I already talked about Mill Creek hose, Cahokia notch points. When we see that at other sites, we know that there was some trading happening, some interaction. Because I'm probably biased, but if you've seen a Cahokia notched point, you can tell that it's Mississippian, it's Cahokia notch point. It's really nice. Because again, we've got those specialized craftspeople. There are other points similar to it. They're not as nice. Here's just an image of the excavations for Interpretive Center where it is now. So today there's a part of it where you can see like it's painted exactly where these buildings were. So you can see that like here, this building, you can see it was rebuilt multiple times with these different lines. It looks like they expanded it. And at one point there was a circular building. So here's another example that might be easier to see. So rebuilding it, making it bigger. Here's the plazas I was talking about. So multiple plazas. I don't think every Mississippian site has multiple plazas, but Cahokia has that 4, because 4 is also a secret number. You're gonna be like, Angela, but there's 5 squares there. Well, when they built the stockade, they did some urban renewal, so to speak, and they removed the neighborhoods that were here and they moved the plaza over so that there's still that 4 surrounding Cahokia Mounds. So a lot of landscape modification. Here's that mound I talked about, Powell Mound. You can see that really nice triangle shape, triangular prism shape of it. That was 3rd or 4th largest. Woodhenge showing the major points. This is for the spring and fall equinox, summer solstice, winter solstice. Mount 72, I had mentioned, that was excavated because it was not aligned along the cardinal directions, like we can see here, aligned north-south, north-south. It was aligned southeast to northwest, which is the winter solstice alignment. Here's some trade items leaving the Cahokia region that we see at other Mississippian sites, and we see here material that is found at Cahokia. So here are the female examples. This one is pretty famous. She's called the Burger figurine, Birger. Here's the Cahokia points, outlines of them, because I'm pretty sure the actual examples that are usually floating around are from Mound 72, and to respect Native Americans, don't show associated funerary objects. So those types of many of these points were found with Mound 72. And then again, that flint Mill Creek chert hoe. So what's going on? So let me go back to here. So height 1100, sometimes 10 people say 1050, so we'll say 1050 to 1150, because 1175 is when they start building the stockade. And they build that for 100 years and rebuild it 3 more times after the first time. There's no evidence. The excavations I've done were around this area to see, did it turn behind Monk's Mound? Did it go into the creek? Where'd it go? We never found it. And also never found evidence of conflict. So no burning of the stockade wall, no like caches of artifacts that maybe someone forgot because they're like, I gotta have this arrowhead ready to pop onto my arrow shaft. Possible evidence of conflict is seen at Angel Mounds. One of their stockades had been burned, and there was preserved daub. So the plaster that they had put around the wall. But there could have been, conflict with other groups, possible resource depletion, right? They're only growing maize. So maize takes out a lot of nitrogen from the soil. Native plants could be putting back in, but probably not as much as would have been needed because those aren't intensely farmed. And so it could be that the soil is not fertile anymore because there's no beans. Beans don't come in until after people have left Cahokia Mounds. They don't come into our region. They show up in the southeast, so that's why you might have heard of the three sisters: corns, beans, and squash. But that's not here, so there's that potential. But we do see a population decline around 1200 AD. Monumental construction is slowing down. By 1250 is kind of stopped. 1275, they've decided to stop building the stockade. And 1300, most people have left. 1350 is basically when there's nobody living there full time anymore, nobody doing ceremonies, nobody doing mound construction, monumental construction, utilizing the mounds in any way. My cat's doing something weird, sorry. So what happened? We're not sure. But there's probably a diaspora to other sites. It could be, not that any of us have ever experienced unrest with our political leaders or society, but that could have been happening there. Maybe not everyone's happy with the leaders. Oh, Monk's Mound, I forgot to mention this. Monk's Mound is the largest pre-contact human-made earthwork in the Americas. If you ever come down, you might be like, oh, that's really big. That's actually a landfill nearby. That's a modern mound, trash mound. But this is largest pre-contact human-made earthwork, larger pyramids. World's largest pyramid is in Cholula, Mexico, but that's made of stone. This is fully made of soil. There was a very large building on top. Earlier interpretations said it was the one chief living there. But if you see, there was a post. Posts are important because those align all three worlds, shows power. Fun fact, they reconstructed the building and post in the 80s and they had to take it down because Monk's Mound is 100 feet tall, is the tallest thing in the area. So the post kept getting struck by lightning and the building kept catching fire. And when I learned that, I was like, no way in heck is someone living there. Maybe on the lower terraces, but here, the size of it, when I was in Oklahoma, I worked for the Muskogee Nation on their council house building. When I thought back about Cahokia Mounds, I was like, I bet that's a council house because they have so many different language being spoken here, probably a lot of conflict, misunderstanding. You need the council. Also, descendant groups and what was written about historically, even by the Europeans, there's always two chiefs, council and elders leading the tribe, leading the group. So you need to fit a lot of people in one spot, and that's going to be there. As a show of power, that post being struck by lightning, yeah, you'd be like, some powerful business is being done up there. I'm not part of it, but that's pretty cool to see. So it could have just been lots of conflict because there's so many different groups of people. Could have been people through time and space decide this type of lifestyle is not great for me. I'm gonna go and be more mobile, like my old ancestors. They were moving about the landscape. So Osage are one of the many descendant groups. When they encountered Europeans, they were plains people. But prior to that, they were woodlands people. So people can change and adapt to different circumstances. So it's probably all of those reasons. But again, can't excavate intention, can't ever fully know. why they left, and then left the site and didn't use it again. So the name comes from the Cahokia of the Illinois, or Illinois Confederacy. They live in a village called the Village of Cahokia. It's now known as Cahokia Heights. It's about 10 miles south of Cahokia Mounds. It was pretty close to the Mississippi River. There was a French trading post, and these French priests from the Seminary of Foreign Missions came down from Quebec and proselytized. The Cahokia people has conflict with the other French, and priests removed the Cahokia to live on the first terrace of Monk's Mound. So that's the first terrace. The priests built a chapel where this former Mississippian temple had been, and they built houses. The Cahokia people built houses and had a garden. They lived there for, I think, 20 years. Their numbers were reduced through further conflict with French and other Europeans, as well as other native groups. And so they integrated into a larger Illinois tribe. And I think it was the 1800s is when removal out of Illinois happened. And so many groups, many of them Illinois Confederacy tribes joined, and they're now known as the Peoria Tribe of Indians of Oklahoma. So here's those language families that we see at Cahokia Mounds, and then where most of them are now in Oklahoma. So here's the Peoria, Quapaw are just in Miami. I'm not saying that with a Mascoutah accent. That's how you properly pronounce Miami. And it's like Miami Yaki, but it's Miami. The Modoc are actually from California. Shawnee, our descent group, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee, Osage, Pawnee, Kaw, Ponca, Oto, Iowa, Kickapoo. You can see many of them in Oklahoma. But wanted to point out the Peoria. Oh, I don't have my last slide. It's hidden. But just talking about Cahokia Mounds today. Oh, I don't know if I did something, but or maybe it was slow. But we have a friends group, Cahokia Mounds Museum Society. If you're interested in purchasing anything, I want to show off my lovely new water bottle that I got. It's 40 ounces. You can get it from the gift shop online. They help us out a lot. Will buy us printer paper, printer ink, but they also have a very specific land acquisition fund that they use when a nearby subdivision lots, State Park Place, when those lots come up for sale, they'll go to the seller and ask them to sell it to the Museum Society, and then the Museum Society gives the deed to the state. So that's how we've been gradually expanding, and we got to add a total of 100 acres this year from some of those lots and other agricultural fields that people were willing to sell to the state for that further preservation. Cahokia Mound State Historic Site is also a UNESCO World Heritage Site, became one in 1982, brings thousands of visitors worldwide to us. Yeah, that's pretty much the end.
Thank you very much. That was very interesting. I have a couple questions. I know others will too. You mentioned they were, they were primarily, agriculture, but was there any evidence found that they had kept domestic animals?
The only domesticated animal, I'll just use this picture, is the dog. So there is evidence. There's been a couple dog burials found So meaning they
So,
cared for their pets.
so what were they doing for protein?
Deer, birds, turtle. Well, there's a a lot. So so these borrow pits are kind of mini ecosystems too. It brings in a lot of wild animals, a lot of waterfowl, a lot of wild turkeys will come through, deer, frogs, turtles, some fish. They don't grow very big, but apparently a biologist told me this. Waterfowl will sometimes step, accidentally in fish egg nests. I don't know what you call fish egg things, but they step in them, fly, go into another water system, and then the eggs will, hatch. And then so yeah, I have a story. One of my seasonals was like, Angela, there's fish in these borrow pits. And I was like, ain't no way there's Mississippian descendant fish in these borrow pits. That's crazy. And I had said that to the biologists, and they're like, no, the waterfowl brings them over. And I was like, I had to like text them and be like, I'm sorry, I thought you were crazy, but you're not. So so it's a really good natural resource, food source, just really close for that population. They're eating a lot of deer, a lot of deer.
Okay, so nobody else is jumping in.
We
You showed an image of the shells with the circles cut out. What did they use to cut the shells out? The circles, because that to me seems that would be, they looked so precise, and it didn't look like there was any breakage. So I'm wondering.
It was someone modern did that, and that's still really hard to do. I don't probably a lot of patience and skill. So again, that craft specialization, I can just be an apprentice, learn how to like carefully cut out these circles. They also used beads from the columella, is that how you call it? The center part. So that would have been cut, and they're using stone tools.
That was impressive. I mean, wow. Even with the tools I have on hand, I don't think I could make perfect circles like that. I mean, I know I couldn't.
Yeah, I wish I had saved the video I watched, but it was about a native artist who had been an apprentice of someone who, made shell gorgets. He was also an artist, but like talking about how difficult it was and how much patience. I might try to find it again, because it like she's using modern tools, and she's like, how did the ancestors do this? So
we do have
Yeah,
some.
you had
Oh, go ahead, Alan.
yeah, said you had a section there where it showed the items that were being traded, and it had mica and shells and copper and something else. But were like the mica and shells were basically, was that just for decoration, or was there another use for them? That's what I was the mica was what I was interested in.
the mica, I've found like small pieces of mica in excavations. My understanding of mica usage comes from the Hopewell time period, where they would make designs. Like if you go to the Field Museum, you'll see those elaborate designs. So those are probably ceremonial, because those are mica is very fragile. But there's also a big one at the Gilcrease that was probably used as a mirror. I think mica as a mirror is also used in Mexico, but I'm not sure. But as that mirror to access different portals, universes.
Ah,
Did
We
they
have some.
use any mica there at the site? Were there any tailings and that sort of thing?
Can you say that again? I think I'm
Okay. Did you find any tailings or the likes of mica at Cahokia?
What is tailing?
When you're chipping stones and you throw away the stuff that you don't want.
That's probably what I've found. Because they're like itty bitty pieces. So I've never found like a huge sheet. It's just always been small pieces in like a trash pit.
I've been into Ohio at a number of sites, and they had a lot of mica that they cut, and very precisely.
Yes, that's the Hopewell, the Middle Woodland time period is where they're doing that. And a lot of it's in Ohio at those mound sites.
Did that get traded into Cahokia?
Not at that time period. There's no, well, there could be less than 1% of that 4,000 acres has been excavated. So there could be middle woodland occupation, but that's not really been found. Middle woodland is more found up on the bluffs. The mica, again, I'm not quite sure what it was used for aside from ceremony, but it's coming from the Carolinas, not from Ohio. Any mica that had been traded that was like shaped, I'm not sure about either during the Hopewell time period. So basically, no, not coming from Ohio.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have some comments in the chat and some questions.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead with reading some of those. Joseph Sullivan said, "Nice talk."
Thank you.
Question from Chris Kruger. Thanks for the talk. Beyond the land acquisition you mentioned, what are other big projects you're working on at the site?
So, the land acquisition is through the state and through Cahokia Mounds Museum Society, our friends group. Currently, our interpretive center is closed, undergoing renovations. So that's a big project. We've had some unforeseen circumstances, which is why we're not opening this year. Hopefully, spring next year. Follow us on Facebook, follow our website, trying to update that. Let's see. One thing that I mean, as an interest to us at Cahokia Mounds, and let me go back this way. And well, you can't really see it. So I think it's these two are Mound 30 and 31. They were, one of them I think was fully destroyed. The other one was partially destroyed to build a discount store called Grandpa Pigeons. And in the 2000s, the state, there was money to purchase that lot because it was like an abandoned store. And they only had the money to tear down part of the building. And so there's this really ugly, dilapidated building, and that's getting torn, I think is getting torn down next year. So that's going to be exciting. It's, so there's that, but that's it. I can't think of anything. Can't just like, September 27th is a Saturday. We're having a nature culture hike. So if anyone's interested, my undergrad former advisor, Dr. Julie Zimmerman, will be leading the hike. So she'll be pointing out like natural resources and how they relate it to the Mississippians. We're also going to have some birds, some raptors from the World Bird Sanctuary, because raptors are an important aspect, you know, of, we could see that in this imagery. When you see this like marking, the peregrine falcon marking on artifacts, that represents like power and stuff. So we're gonna have the raptors there, and the gift shop will be open. So you could come down to the gift shop and get a mug.
Nice. Are there other questions from the audience? I have more to read, but if anybody has one they want to chime in with, that's fine too. All right, I'll read on. Stephen Ann said, "Thank you, very informative presentation." Jack's mom asked, "When is this ended?" So we will continue asking questions as long as Dr. Cooper will be staying on to answer questions, and then we usually have an informal chat afterwards as well. So you stay as long as you want. Then we have a question from Tim. "Thank you, Dr. Cooper. What are some of the challenges that archaeologists face when studying sites like Cahokia?" I guess getting the land is part of it, right?
The preservation, yeah, protecting the land. Looting is a thing that happens at all sites.
Really?
Unfortunately, we have people who really disrespect the site. Monk's Mound is the only mound that we permit visitors to climb using the stairs.
Hmm.
Because it's a very sacred site. A lot of the mounds are burial mounds. So that's like if someone were to just step all over someone's gravestone. We've had people drive ATVs on the mounds. It's like horrific. Just because also the like is disrespectful, but the amount of erosion that it causes, which is also why the deer, they need to stay off the mounds. Oh, that's one thing. If anyone is a deer hunter, a bow hunter, the not occupied parts of the sites, the wooded, very wooded areas, you can join the lottery to hunt deer at Cahokia Mounds. So that's a thing. That's an option for anyone. I think for me, because I'm a generalist, but I'm also interested in the individual human lives of the people. For me, I can't ever know what people are thinking or ever know what they wanted. And so that's always something that I struggle with, trying to understand the cosmology, the religion, why specifically here in the American Bottom, why not East St. Louis site? Why not St. Louis? Why was it here? You know, what the practical, it's not right on the river. That's a practicality thing. Flooding would have just came from the creeks and the wetlands, not quite Mississippi River. It's a 3.5 hour walk from the river to the center part of the site. So for me, that's my struggle is like, why'd y'all do this?
I have a question that kind of will get into some of that, thinking about the remains from the individuals who left them. What is the policy when you uncover bones, and how are they displayed and with respect?
So the human remains that have been uncovered and removed from Cahokia Mounds, State Historic Site, have not been put on display because that's disrespectful. And also, those were sent to Illinois State Museum for repository. We have a law called NAGPRA, Native American Grave Protection and Repatriation Act, and that is to protect those human remains, return them to descendant groups, or return them to related groups. If it's like Cahokia Mounds where it's so ancient, you talk with the related descendant groups. Because that through time, people change how they identify themselves, move about landscape. But those 4 major language families, many of those tribes, who I also was pointing out, they have stories about Cahokia Mounds. They have specific stories. Many of the descendant groups, because of the history of archaeology, that's a valid difficulty that many archaeologists have faced, is descendant groups refusing to work with the archaeologists, which very valid. You know, they dug up their ancestors, sometimes put them on display in museums, looted artifacts, looted the funerary goods that were placed with those ancestors. NAGPRA has done a lot to protect things and give back Native things, but it's only related to institutions that have received federal money. So, it doesn't always work, but kind of the golden rule, you know, like, how would I want my body in the future to be, you know, respected, taken care of, my ashes, my remains, any type of remains? Am I going to be okay with that? Would someone in the past be okay with that? Does what I feel about myself, is that the same as my neighbor? You know, are they going to feel the same way? So not really placing your own ideas about what is okay or not okay, and listening to the descendant groups. That's the most way to be respectful, and talking with them. And that's what I've been doing too, to understand this, is I talk to the people I know in Oklahoma, and I'm like, can you explain this to me? Can you explain what's going on here? And sometimes they don't know, sometimes they do, or maybe what they do know is sacred knowledge and I'm not supposed to know, which is valid for me to not know. I'm not in group. So you asked a really loaded question. But I guess at minimum, follow the laws. Illinois has great archaeological protection laws for archaeological sites, for mounds. There's a new burial law that was enacted, I think, last year, and that's to further protect those ancestral sites and remains. And then on that note, at Cahokia Mounds, currently we do not have any invasive archaeology going on. Invasive as an excavation. Excavation is inherently destructive. You can't put the dirt back in the way you got it out. But there's some non-invasive, like LIDAR and ground penetrating radar, which is showing, the ground penetrating radar is showing these like thousands of structures that were on site, which is really cool. Like, you wouldn't be able to see like that plan view if you're down in there excavating. So I think the more technological advances that way is going to really help archaeologists to see what's there, to be able to collaborate more with descendant groups, to be able to decide, okay, here are these buildings. Is there something that y'all are interested in that we can work together to maybe excavate? Because at our site in particular, it's also, much of it is very sacred. We don't know all those sacred spots. Like, we don't want to be disturbing those ancestors there.
Yeah, it's amazing what LIDAR can reveal. I'm always astounded when you see somebody looking at something they thought they knew, and then they bring in LIDAR, and it's like, whoa.
Yeah, I'm excited for that too, because we have so many like wooded areas, and like, are there secret mounds that we don't know about? So I'm waiting for that doctoral student to finish his research, because if you do research at Cahokia Mounds, you have to share it with us. Those are requirements. So I can't wait for that.
Was Mound 72 a burial mound?
It was 3 separate burial mounds.
Right.
Mhm.
I seem to remember that one of the chiefs had a shell bed that he was laid on.
So actually, it was a couple on the shells, in the possibly in the shape of a bird. It wasn't just it wasn't just the one chief. When I had mentioned earlier, the earlier interpretations kept pushing for the one chief. And it wasn't just this couple on the shells. There's actually 2 other couples in that same burial. So at least 3 couples in that burial that you're talking about.
do you know a date for that, a time period?
I think it's pretty early. I don't have the dates memorized, but I think it's early on, like 1000 AD or 1050 AD.
Mm-hmm. Is that when it kind of reached its peak?
Yes. It's about when there's a lot of activity happening at Cahokia Mounds.
So you've been out on the site for years and years and years. What is the most interesting story to tell us, or the most interesting thing you have discovered or found or, learned?
I guess I'm learning all the time. I'm learning, you know, and trying to retain all the information, like dates. I have dyscalculia, so numbers are hard. Which is why I couldn't tell you how many posts are at Woodhenge. Um, so retaining that information, building on that, trying to get to Mr. Mound's level of knowledge of knowing what's happened at the site through the archaeology, what's the archaeology that happened, the interpretation of the site, learning from descendant groups, having conversations. Like I had a, a visitor, she is Mandan Hidatsa Teresa Baker. She had an art opening at Contemporary Art Museum in St. Louis. I gave her a tour and I showed her Chunky, and she was like, "We played that game, you know?" And I was like, "Yeah, the painting." And she was like, "Yeah." And she was like, "But we didn't call it Chunky." So I'm waiting for her to get back to me about what the man did. But she said that her people don't play that game anymore. So that's like really interesting. At what point did it stop being played? So those kind of like personal stories I hear from, native visitors, but also people who come in and they're like, my grandma brought me here way back when, and like, I remember this and this, and getting that interaction. That's the most fulfilling for me. The coolest thing that I have found, or at least I'll say I found because I was the supervisor, there was a French coin that was excavated the second time I excavated at East Palisade. So there's written documents about a French trading post called Canteen Trading Post, but no one knows where it was. So that coin doesn't tell us where it was because of the context, but the fact that like there's this French coin that no one had found a French coin at the site before. So I was like, that's really cool.
Really cool. We have some more questions, comments in the chat. One question from, I guess it's Allie. Did they use mica temper and ceramics during that period?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Allie. Yes, they also would have used mica as a temper,
Okay.
but shell was like the big thing.
Okay. So another use of the mica.
Mm-hmm.
All right. From Charlotte By. Thank you, Dr. Cooper, for the talk. What is the use of stockades and plazas? Is it also for religious purposes?
Let's see if I can get back. So I'll use this reconstruction as an example. So the stockade would have been for defensive purposes, and there's an arbor here within the plaza. So a plaza is surrounded by homes, mounds, neighborhoods. So I don't know how to describe an arbor. It's where you hang out. It's where you hang out, which is what a plaza is. It's a communal space. It's ceremonial. So market would have happened here, trading, storytelling, ceremonies, chunky game being played here. We know that there was a large feast happening around that time of like the 1050. That's where we found thousands and thousands of animal bones. Again, when I say we, I mean the archaeologists, because I was not alive at that point. But thousands of deer bone, thousands of seeds. Feeding Cahokia by Dr. Gail Fritz. She had to take a sample of some seeds to study them. That's how many thousands of seeds there were, like wild, and that they were preserved. The soil is very acidic. So, and then that capping off quickly is evident in descent groups too, when they have, after a ceremony, they have trash, they quickly cover it up. And then also turn it into a mound. Stockade. So at Cahokia Mounds, why we are not sure is it defensive or just like an exclusivity thing, is because it is only surrounding the central ceremonial location, the largest plaza, the largest mounds. There's evidence that the homes around where the stockade was constructed, they were quickly burned to just take them down so that they could put the stockade up. So there was some kind of threat or reason for them to put the stockade up around that area.
So it's a gated community and people probably had to pay to get in.
I don't know about paid, but yeah, it's becoming more exclusive. And I forgot to mention climate change is happening around 1200 AD, right? It's like little ice age. So 1175, maybe they're starting to feel some of that. And 1200 is when it like kicks into high gear. And they're like, okay, we have to really close off this area, be exclusive about who's coming in, utilizing things. But not sure. But we see plazas at many Mississippian sites, as well as with descent groups, utilizing them. Yeah. Community.
You would,
Um,
Yeah, but
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, with this group saying Mississippian age,
Oh,
might have
not
two
the
different-
geologic. We're saying
Yeah.
it because of the river and
yes,
the.
I absolutely know. Yes, but
They're
yeah,
not that old. They're not. I don't usually encounter geologists or paleontologists where I have to make that distinction. I did in grad school get in an argument with a geology student, and I was like, there could be multiple names for different things, like the same name for different things. And he kept telling me I was wrong, and I was like, I'm not wrong. If I'm wrong, you're also wrong. So yeah, much in terms of time, much younger.
Yeah,
This
yes.
Mississippian version.
you had commented about stories from the various people down in Oklahoma about this site. Is there any written up bit on this?
On the stories,
Yes.
I'm not sure. I'll have to look into it.
Are you asking if there are legends about the site carried
Yeah,
on by
just the stories the local people now, or the Indians now, Native Americans, do they talk about Cahokia, and what do they tell about it as opposed to what do you think about it?
So First Americans Museum in Oklahoma City They have stories about Cahokia Mounds, and that comes from many of those descendant groups who are in Oklahoma. The stories I know about were told to me. So I don't think I'm privy to share those stories. I haven't been given permission to share those stories. And so that could also be why I don't know about any of them written down. Because again, the history of the discipline of archaeology and anthropology was really exploitative of Native American people. So not everything was shared to protect those things. So I'll give an example of a spider cult. We just call it cult because it's like a select group of people who did that. Within the Osage Nation, no one does that anymore. So they don't talk about it because no one knows what it's about because it was a very select in-group people thing. But we see from photographs of people who were part of that group that the image of those spiders are very similar to shell gorgets with spiders on them that are found at Cahokia Mounds. So there's those kinds of examples. So there might be stories that are more exclusive that we're just not going to know about because we're not part of that group.
Okay.
It's got to be a little bit of frustration in that, because you're trying to learn for the right reasons, and the frustration of somebody knows, but there's to accept that frustration and be okay with it. It's
I don't know that I have frustration about it because I don't know if somebody knows. Like if someone knows, they don't have to tell me that they know. It's just again my more frustration of like trying to understand the human brain. Really is the frustration of like, where does this come from? Why do we do it?
So it's not like Chris saying, hey, I know where this is and I know what this means, but I'm not going to tell you. So it's not, they don't say they know, but we're not going to tell you. They just don't say anything.
Maybe. Yeah.
You
I have
had a slide.
question.
You had a slide that indicated some points and different styles. What was the approximate size of the points that you find on site? Are they, yeah.
Let's see. So this is not to scale. The Mill Creek Chert Hoe is actually probably going to be the longest thing. Like if you were to put that next to the burger figurine, which is this lady, lovely lady right here, it's gonna probably go up to here. That one's a pretty big one. This little lady, she fits in your hand. Cahokia notched points are maybe 2 inches. Let me get a ruler out. Yeah, 1.5, 2 inches long. And then the base is gonna be like half that, like an inch, half inch.
So these weren't designed for deer. These were designed for very small, like.
No, it's an arrowhead. So it'd just be on an arrow shaft. But these ones are really nice. These examples are from the mound. So when you're buried with something and you're someone important, like a priest or chief, you're gonna get the really nice stuff. But these types of points have been found at like, I've seen like farmers have them because they're just, that's the style. And it's like, oh, I wanna make this like Cahokia style. Like those people down in the city.
the figurines, I'm curious about the figurines. I'm just gonna be blunt. They're kind of scary. I mean, they're not from the view of them. They don't look like
Yeah.
they're beautiful women. They look like they're kind of scary.
Oh, I think she's probably struggling to dig into that snake back. Which the snake is also going to be a symbol of the lower world. So she's got a Mill Creek chert hoe. So she's digging. So she's probably like, this is really hard. But she's like really beautifully made and carved. This one is not, I don't want to qualify it, but the craftsmanship is not the same. Because I don't have if I had a different view, this burger figurine, you can see her nostril. Like the artist carved in her nostril. And like you can see her teeth. On the back of her are bottle gourds or squash blossoms growing on her back. The snake has like a big eye and other like snake aspect, like snake ear, like it's very detailed.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to comment on the skill involved in them, just that they're not they're just not that image I'm used, on some of the other native artifacts where the women are more I don't want to say use the word beautiful, but they're more alluring or something. And I'm struggling here, and I'm probably just showing my ignorance.
I mean, I don't know what other artifacts you could be talking about. So for me, I'm like, this lady is like really great.
Well, I'm thinking of just like the usual goddess where they show them as the rounded, fertile females, and
The bottom one looks like like you said, like she is working, like she's
yeah.
kind
I
of like
don't know.
gritting her teeth, kind of like
Yeah.
with so
I don't
maybe
know that
it's
the fertility of plumpness is an association that's found in the Mississippian figurines. I've never noticed plump figures, even if I think about the ones from Georgia, they're not plump. Like that fertility, the fertility she's presenting is with the maize, like symbolism of that Mill Creek chert hoe, of the fertility of the plants on her back. So yeah, I think she's working hard. That's why they're probably like, oh, I keep seeing all these ladies just like trying to dig up the sod and their face, I think that could be it. But it's past 9:30, past my bedtime. If people